Christmas is just around the corner, so treat yourself or someone else to the gift of a brand new pair of Raycons. The new everyday earbuds are the biggest refresh in years, and you can get up to 25% off your order when you visit buyraycon.com/skillup. Click the link below or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, true story, I was meant to be in LA right about now getting ready for the Game Awards. I had my suit ready and everything, but sadly a bunch of stuff came up that meant that I couldn't make that trip happen. Very bummed about it, especially considering that I'm hearing proper chatter about this year's Game Awards being a really big one. So you know what that means? Extra competitive interest rates on a new gamer-themed credit card. But also probably some game trailers. I don't know, Jeff likes to keep us on our toes. This is actually the second last official show of the year. Next week we'll do a regular show, and after Christmas we'll do our annual news roundup. We all thought that 2024 would be a fairly quiet year after the madness of 2023. Turns out, not so much. And yeah, it's not like the news is slowing down this week, so let's get to it, shall we? Last week we spoke extensively about all the shit going down in Ubisoft Town, and TLDR, it's real bad over there. After an absolutely disastrous year full of flops, Ubisoft capped it all off by announcing the shutdown of X-Defiant, their ambitious free-to-play shooter that was trying to go toe-to-toe with Call of Duty, in the same year that Activision just happened to release a bangin' COD, one that is also available on Game Pass. But the broader background to this is that Ubisoft has been struggling for a very long time, so much so that for the past few years, there have been rumors that Ubisoft have been positioning themselves to be acquired. The biggest roadblock in all of this has been Ubisoft's large and European-based workforce, as private equity generally doesn't like hiring people that they can't summarily fire, and European labor laws make that sort of corporate pillaging notoriously difficult. Still, rumors suggest that Chinese-based Tencent have been circling for a purchase for some time now, and this week, Reuters are reporting that talks on that front are as advanced as they've ever been. Reuters has two sources claiming that Ubisoft shareholders are deep in discussions with Tencent about what a buyout might look like, but there appears to be one sticking point. The Gilmour family wants to retain control of the company after the buyout. Does that seem like a reasonable request, given that it was CEO Yves Gilmour who brought the company to the point where a buyout like this was even on the table? Setting aside all of the deeply troubling cultural issues that were happening under his watch, unbeknownst to him he claims, there's also the fact that this dude has been running the company for nearly 40 years. This guy has had his time in the top job, and the last 5 years of his leadership have been ruinous, as he's been categorically unable to position the company for its next growth phase, blowing precious resources on failed live service launches like Skull and Bones and X-Defiant, completely squandering the immense potential of the Division franchise, over-leveraging into licensed IPs like Star Wars and Avatar, failing to manage key projects like Skull and Bones, the Prince of Persia remaster, and Beyond Good and Evil 2, and don't even get me started on all that NFT bullshit they did as well, including releasing an actual NFT game like a month ago. Unbelievable. Given the incredible strain that Ubisoft is under, a buyout does seem increasingly likely, and it would be the perfect moment for Gilmour to step back and let a new generation of leadership begin the rebuilding process. Will it go down that way though? Who knows, man. Bobby Kotick held on right to the end and got himself like a $500 million payout, so never bet against an entrenched CEO. Speaking of Beyond Good and Evil 2, by the way, did you guys catch this interview with the former series boss Michael Ansel? So this was conducted by French outlet Supervoir and then spotted by VGC. In the interview, Ansel, who is no longer with Ubisoft but is consulting on their upcoming Rayman project, he really spilled the beans on what he thought went wrong with Beyond Good and Evil 2 back when he was still on that project. He puts a lot of it down to clashes between management. Quote, "Passion is a fabulous energy, but it can also lead to clashes between enthusiasts. On Beyond Good and Evil 2, for example, there were too many problems between managers. The art director wanted to redo everything over and over again, and the game director wanted to make a generated dungeon game, and I was dreaming of a space adventure. We simply couldn't agree, and the game director took the project in other directions. In this type of situation, the teams are thrown around and don't even know who's in charge and who's making the decisions. The producer is supposed to bring order to the situation, but that didn't happen. Yves Gilmour even had to go down to Montpellier to get things back on track, but that wasn't enough, and the game director continued his stubbornness," end quote. He also goes on to take his fair share of the blame in all of this by saying that he didn't defend the project well enough, leading to this malaise. It's a surprisingly frank assessment of what went down, given that game makers typically remain very tight-lipped about all this stuff, even when they roll off projects. I mean, they might open up like 10 years later, but this game is still in active development. Then again, this game has been in development for more than 10 years, so I guess the statute of limitations has passed. Anyway, Ansel claims to have found some peace after being very burned out during Beyond Good and Evil 2's tortured development, and after taking some time away from the games industry, he will be helping out from the sidelines on that new Rayman game that Ubisoft Montpellier are working on. That team just put out Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, so every reason to be optimistic about that. Let's hope it doesn't suffer the same lengthy and cursed development process that Beyond Good and Evil 2 is currently still in the throes of. Speaking of a lengthy cursed development process, it's almost hard to believe that the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League released this year. Doesn't it feel like that came out like 4 years ago? But no, it was this year in February, and from the moment of its arrival, it was pretty clear that this thing was not going to have very long legs. With middling day one sales and player counts that didn't last a month, Rocksteady quickly wound down their planned community support for the game, transitioning to an as-needs basis for community updates rather than the regularly scheduled monthly updates that were previously promised. That silence became pretty deafening when the remaining player base was asking about the longer-term future of the game. They knew that 4 seasons of content were planned because that stuff was all pre-sold in the deluxe edition. But what about beyond that? Could we expect a season 5? Early reporting offered a definitive no in response to that question, with Jason Schreier of Bloomberg saying some time ago that Season 4 would be the last content drop, and that right now Rocksteady are actually working on a new project, while also helping out with a Hogwarts Legacy Director's Cut. That one still hasn't even been announced yet, by the way. All of the question marks evaporated this week, though, when Rocksteady released an official statement on the future of the game, and it's exactly what we all predicted. Quote, "With Deathstroke joining the roster, the Suicide Squad's crusade against Brainiac is drawing to an end. Season 4 will finish up with Episode 8, which is scheduled to release in January 2025, and that will serve as the last seasonal episode for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, while Season 4, Episode 8 will mark the final battle against Brainiac. All online features will continue to be available, so you'll still be able to enjoy co-op with friends, as well as all previous seasonal episodic content. You'll have the option to play the game via the new offline mode, which always allows access to the main story campaign and all post-launch seasonal gameplay content without an internet connection," end quote. The confirmation of an offline mode is honestly very good news. This had been earlier announced, but I had my doubts as to whether or not Rocksteady would actually follow through with it, but they did. And now the 10 years worth of work that went into this game will remain playable even after the servers are inevitably taken offline, which they certainly will be because Warner Brothers aren't in this for the charity of it. We've heard so much about this game this year that I'm sure we're all a little numb to it now, but the reality is that this was one of the biggest live service flops in the history of video games, and it came from one of the most lauded studios in the business. Like, it would actually be the biggest live service flop of all time were it not for Concord coming along and eating its lunch a few short months later. Not to mention other flops like X-Defiant and Foam Stars and probably a whole bunch of other ones that I can't even remember now because it feels like there's just too many of them to keep track of. Earlier this year when I spoke to Sean Layden, the former Sony boss, he predicted that we were at the tail end of this live service fool's gold rush and that a correction was already happening. Hard to disagree with that given how much treasure has been spilled just this year alone. Anyway, Suicide Squad is regularly discounted to as little as $5 for the deluxe edition, so if you'd like to pick it up at any point in the future, you can do that thanks to this new offline mode. There's a really cool Batman level during the campaign, which I really enjoyed. The rest of it, though, not so much. Just briefly, not sure if you've been tracking it, but shit is going down in the Dauntless community. If you haven't heard about Dauntless before, that's a bit of a shame, because up until recently, it was a lightweight but still worthwhile free-to-play Monster Hunter style game. I played it some time ago when it was still early in its life cycle, but even then I could tell it had good bones. Since then, the game has expanded significantly and maintained a small but committed player base despite never being available on Steam. It was always a console and Epic exclusive. All of that changed on December 5th though, when the game did arrive on Steam, and that would have been all well and good if the developers hadn't also completely overhauled the game for all platforms, and that overhaul appears to be one of the biggest downgrades in live service history. Honestly, too many changes to detail here, but just as an example, the developers removed around 180 weapons from the game, leaving you with just 18 options, the most attractive of which is locked behind the paid battle pass. The game also added loot boxes, because that's a thing we all wanted to see make a return in 2024. As a result of these and many more changes, the game has launched to an overwhelmingly negative 14% rating on Steam, with every negative review calling the update a downgrade on an unprecedented scale. Interesting to note that the developer Phoenix Labs was recently purchased by Fort Labs, a blockchain platform. I wonder if that has anything to do with this. Probably nothing. Hey, here's some good update news though. CD Projekt Red have snuck out a sneaky Cyberpunk patch when they swore black and blue that they weren't working on it any longer. The announcement came out of nowhere 2 days ago and the details were revealed during one of their Red live streams. The update is a modest one, but it's still very cool. The biggest addition is the ability to recolor cars, and this sounds pretty simple until you see it in action. The way it works is that you can take a photo of any color that you can see in the game and then apply that to your car instantly. Alternatively, you can just bring up a menu while driving and select a color from a wheel and then alter the hue and saturation of that color or colors, because you can have multiple colors on the car. It's basically like the most advanced car recoloring tool that you'll find outside of a dedicated racing game, and it comes as a totally free update that CD Projekt Red never even told us was coming. These recolors opened up some big potential for anyone who enjoys a bit of in-game photography, so it's a good thing that CD Projekt Red also updated the photo mode with a whole bunch of new options, honestly too many here to list. The final addition is a bunch of new options in character creation, adding things like 32 more eye colors, 18 lip makeup types, 2 body tattoos, and tons of other stuff. Sadly though, no additional penis options were added to the game. I've already emailed CD Projekt Red to voice my disappointment about the matter, and I will of course report back if and when they respond. A quick lightning round to finish off. Ralph Grassetti is the immensely talented artist who led the art design work on the recent God of War games. After wrapping up on those, he left Sony Santa Monica to take up a new gig at Netflix, since they had just set up a new AAA game studio, and Netflix suddenly realized that making AAA games is actually kinda hard and very expensive, so they closed that studio less than 2 years after forming it. Well, luckily Grassetti seems to have landed on his feet, as he just announced this week that he's joined the ranks of Naughty Dog. He didn't say what he's working on, but Naughty Dog are probably pretty close to revealing their next game, and they're no doubt cooking on other long-term projects. Either way, a pretty big boost to their ranks to have the likes of Grassetti joining them. Apple is currently facing a class action lawsuit on behalf of UK app and game developers. They seek damages up to £785 million, alleging that the 30% cut that the App Store takes is an anti-competitive tax on the industry, and yes, it absolutely is. Let's hope they win. I know Tim Sweeney will certainly be cheering for them. BAFTA has done what Jeff Keighley could not or would not, and ruled Shadow of the Erdtree out of contention for their annual Game of the Year award. Of course, the announcement wasn't targeted at Erdtree specifically, but was instead a new set of rules that makes clear that the Game of the Year category is for newly released original games, where things like DLC and even remasters will have to find a home in other categories. Honestly, I personally am okay with a really astounding DLC being eligible for a Game of the Year nomination, but I'm aware that I'm in the minority with that view. Every bit of chatter I've seen online has leaned heavily in favor of the idea that DLC should be excluded from the running, so this is a rule set that will likely make a lot of people very happy. Some quick sales numbers to top you off. Doki Doki Literature Club has just surpassed 30 million players. Great to see such a wholesome, G-rated, totally normal and well-adjusted dating sim thrive. Love that for them. Speaking of wholesome, well, except for the whole gambling thing, I guess, Infinity Nikki just hit 10 million downloads in 4 days. That's a fair bit shy of the 36 million pre-registrations the game had. But hey, when's the last time you launched anything with 10 million day one signups? Yeah, that's right. Phasmophobia has sold through a total of 22 million units, with 1 million of those being on consoles since the game launched on PS5 and Xbox Series consoles last month. And this next one's actually really great. Dragon's Quest HD 2D Remake has sold through an extremely impressive 2 million units in its first 3 weeks on sale. For a JRPG remaster, those are some hella impressive launch numbers, and Square really needed a big win this year, so this is a nice way to cap off 2024 for them. Though knowing Square, we can no doubt expect an announcement during the next earnings call along the lines of HD 2D Remake did not meet expectations. Sadly, this was a very big week for layoffs across the industry. That's something that's continued to happen in fits and starts over the last few months, but it's generally been smaller studios affected. Still, those numbers add up, and right now more than 14,000 people across the games industry have been affected by layoffs in just 2024 alone. This week, for example, Deck 9, who just put out Life is Strange Double Exposure, announced an unconfirmed number of layoffs, and this comes after it laid off 20% of its workforce back in April of this year. Even worse news for Sweet Badlands, the studio behind Deceive Inc. That's one of those social sleuthing games similar to Among Us. The studio announced this week that it was actually shutting down altogether. The studio boss had this to say, quote, "After a long and difficult road of trying to get Deceive Inc. into a state where it could thrive, we have reached the breaking point for the studio, unable to continue this adventure with you," end quote. Very sad times. Unfortunately, there's more though. Torn Banner put out Chivalry 2 a while ago, and most recently No Room in Hell 2, and they just announced an unconfirmed number of layoffs. Same goes for Illphonic, who put out Friday the 13th, Predator Hunting Grounds, and the off-kilter Killer Clowns from Space. They just said goodbye to an undisclosed number of staff, citing the same tough industry conditions that seem to impact everybody else right now. The biggest cut this week, though, happened at Bulletstorm and Outriders developer People Can Fly. They announced that one of their 6 in-development projects was getting canned, and along with it, 120 jobs are now gone. The studio seems stretched very thin, but most of their projects do have publishing deals supporting them. This project, though, as well as another one, was self-published, and so it's here that People Can Fly decided to make their cuts. Still, 5 more games to look forward to from this team. So yeah, that does feel like a lot, and I do wonder how many of those will actually end up seeing the light of day. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, big thanks to the PC Game Show for breaking the drought of announcements over the past couple of weeks. The show featured dozens of trailers for PC games, some new looks, some release date announcements, a handful of actual new game announcements, some demo drops, a tech demo from the PUBG creator? Sure, why not? Definitely far too many to mention on this show, so do check it out if you're interested, but we'll mention a few of the top line announcements right now. First of all, here's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Take Breakdown. Look, I can't say that a turn-based beat-em-up based on the Turtles was something that I thought I wanted, but now that I know about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. This one is a PC-only release, at least for now, and would you believe it, the developer is actually Strange Scaffold. They're the folks who put out like 3 games in the past year, including I Am Your Beast, Clickalding, and El Paso Elsewhere, and dozens more before that. Looking forward to seeing how this one turns out. It's due sometime in 2025. Digital Sun released the excellent RTS tower defense game Cataclysmo into early access earlier this year, but now they've announced a sequel to their previous hit. Moonlighter 2: The Endless Vault is a return to the dungeon-crawling shop management hybrid game with a dramatic shift to a beautiful 3D art style instead of the sprites. Looks really lovely, and there's a tentative 2025 release date. It's headed to all platforms bar Switch. Escape Simulator 2 was another new game announcement, the sequel to the first-person co-op escape room game from a few years ago that was very good fun. This one has taken a much less cartoony approach though, and a spookier one instead. No date for this one yet, but it's headed to all platforms bar Switch. Some notable release date announcements now, and let's start with Eternal Strands. This is the action-adventure game from Yellow Brick Games, which is headed up by former Dragon Age creative director Mike Laidlaw. It's got hints of Shadow of the Colossus with a destructive element to it, and it looks pretty promising. I actually played this one back at Gamescom. It was a really great time. Won't have to wait too much longer to play this one either, as it'll launch next year, January 28th for all platforms, again, bar Switch. Hey, if you haven't played the narrative RPG Citizen Sleeper, you probably should. It's a really great sci-fi scenario where your possibility space is dictated by the dice roll you roll each day, for better or worse. Lots of hard choices in this one. It was nominated for a bunch of awards when it was released, and now its sequel has a solid release date locked in on the 31st of January next year. It's headed to all platforms. A bit later in the year, we're going to get our hands on Wonderstop. This is the new game directed by Davey Redden and his team. He's the guy that made the Stanley Parable. This is a self-professed cozy game about a retired warrior who manages a tea shop, and it seems like a lot of the game will be about tea shop management stuff. But if the trailers are any indication, it'll also dive pretty deeply into the protagonist's troubled personal history as well, PTSD, etc. It's still being published by Annapurna, even though we don't really know what's going on over there right now. And if you played the Stanley Parable before, you probably know that you should expect some big twists in this storyline. This one's headed to PC and PS5 only, and it's coming out March 11th, 2025. Alright, moving on to some other announcements now. Have you guys heard of this Counter-Strike game? Apparently it's pretty popular. Well, Epic Games has certainly heard about it, because they just announced a new mode for Fortnite called Fortnite Ballistic, and it's a first-person 5v5 competitive tactical mode where you have to defuse a bomb and buy guns. And yeah, look, obviously it's very Counter-Strike, it's very Valorant. It'll be out by the time this video is up, actually. It's going to be labeled as an early access game, and it'll only have one map at launch, and yes, you can still use all of your dumb skins. Hey, remember last week when we talked about that blatant Horizon Zero Dawn knockoff game from Tencent, Light of Moritum? And no, I did not have to Google that name because I completely forgot its unmemorable title. Well, NetEase revealed a new game this week called Anata, and at first blush, it sure as hell looks like a game designed to rival Hoyo vs. Zenless Zone Zero. And it is, but it's also doing some of its own stuff, like web slinging. I mean, I guess you can't really call that its own stuff, but hey, it'll be the first gacha game with Spider-Man mechanics, so that's sort of innovation, right? Some claim that other parts of the trailer look a little too much like GTA 6, but I don't know, man, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. It just looks like cool urban environments where the art style really pops. Gacha continues to be a plague on this industry, not the core games, mind you, since they're actually pretty good, but the monetization model that's attached to them really sucks. But given how phenomenally successful they've been, and given that many gamers don't really have a problem with gacha mechanics, it seems, I expect we'll continue to see plenty more big budget gacha games rolling out over the coming years, and you better believe that Western developers are going to try their hand at this, because there is just too much money on the table right now. Anyway, no date for Anata yet, but it's coming to PC, PS5, iOS, and Android. A few release date announcements now. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 will launch on the 4th of February next year, being brought up a week to avoid the absolute insanity that will be the rest of February, so thank you very much for that, Warhorse, we love you. The 100-line Last Defense Academy is that new visual novel from the creators of the popular and mind-bending Danganronpa and Zero Escape franchises. That's locked in for the 24th of April next year. And finally, Kingmakers is that modern warfare game where you know, drive a pickup truck through medieval hordes and have a minigun, and it just looks fucking sick. Anyway, that's now got an official release window. It's arriving Q1 next year. One delay announcement this week, and it's for the remaster of Croc Legend of Gobos, one of those 1990s 3D platformers that everyone seems to have a weird affection for, myself included. This one's been pushed into 2025 despite originally being slated for later this month. And finally, it's time to sort of say goodbye to Square Enix's Foam Stars. Okay, so this is more of a see you around, since Square Enix announced that the game's next season, which launches next week, will be its final one. After that, service for the game will stay online and events will rotate, and you'll be able to earn all the contents of previous season passes. Paid tiers will remain paid, however. The last season is called The Party Goes On, which is kind of a little sad, I think. Foam Stars just barely made it into a year after launching at the start of 2024. But kudos to Square for keeping it running in a year where Concord bombed in 2 weeks and X-Defiant got the plug pulled on it after 6 months. It's good news that all the hard work that went into making Foam Stars won't just vanish into the ether, at least not yet. So what came out last week? Well, we missed talking about this very important PC release last week, so we'll make up for it now. I'm of course talking about No, I'm just joking. Caves of Cud. It's a science fiction RPG/rogue hybrid game that hinges on an extremely deep procedural world simulation, similar to Dwarf Fortress, sacrificing visual fidelity for the most mind-boggling level of intricacy you can imagine, possibly even beyond that. It's been in development for 17 whole years, and it launched into 1.0 last week. Steam reviews are overwhelmingly positive, with over 8,000 reviews counted. Here's a review from Amenomania on Steam, who has over 660 hours in this thing. Quote, "This is my desert island game. This is a beautiful, deep, and compelling experience full of emergent narrative, a great sense of danger and discovery, risk and reward, and wildly diverse character building," end quote. A pretty sterling endorsement after 660 hours. Okay, now to the biggest RPG that was released last week. I'm of course talking about Fantasia Neon Dimension, the latest game from Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. This is an expanded version of the game which originally launched onto Apple Arcade a while ago, with a unique battle system and some beautiful environments made from real-world dioramas. It's got a strong 82 on OpenCritic, with Eurogamer giving it 4 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, "I love its modern innovations, its tactical combat, and the depth of its world, which all ensure the game thrills on a mechanical level, yet a reliance on genre conventions sees Sakaguchi clinging to his Final Fantasy past, resulting in some outdated storytelling. And while this new version is more approachable, it's not quite the smoothest transition to bigger screens. Fantasia is a game that demands much of its players to rise to its extreme challenge and overlook flaws. Persevere though, and there's satisfaction and nostalgic highs to be found akin to the very best of the genre," end quote. Alright, we've been joking around at this point, but it's finally time to start talking about the biggest release of the week, the one that everyone's been going on about. I'm of course talking about Marvel Rivals. Now, this one has been really setting the place on fire. We already talked about its 10 million players and its massive Steam concurrence, but despite it being basically just Overwatch Classic with Marvel Heroes, people seem to really love it. It's sitting at a mostly positive rating on Steam so far, which is pretty good considering it's got almost 35,000 reviews in. Here's a nice succinct summary of everyone's thoughts from Kelvinzond, quote, "If I'm being quite honest, I don't think it's as good as Overwatch was, but it's better than Overwatch is," end quote. Ouch, take that, Blizzard. Okay, alright, finally time to talk about the biggest early access launch from last week. I'm of course talking about Delta Force. This one is the revival of the tactical shooter series, which debuted on the PlayStation 1, but its launch here hasn't gone as well as Marvel Rivals has. It's sitting at a mixed rating on Steam with 18,000 people chiming in and only 62% of those reviews being positive. Lots of comparisons to Battlefield, but your usual FPS concerns about anti-cheat software and balance and skill-based matchmaking and bad teammates, that's all in the mix. Definitely have a look if you're curious, as it's a free-to-play game, and oftentimes it's just better to see things for yourself, unless you're really paranoid about installing kernel-level anti-cheat stuff. Alright, no more joking around. It's time to talk about the biggest launch of the week for nerds like us. Path of Exile 2 launched into paid early access last week after the show went live. I played a bit of this at Gamescom, and I was surprised at how difficult it was in a good way. Turns out people are either really vibing with that or really not. Either way, it's launched onto Steam with a very positive user rating. 82% of the 26,000 reviews have given it a thumbs up. Steam user No Comply has 18 hours of the game and has basically given it a rousing endorsement by comparing it to Diablo 2. Quote, "This game really brings back the feeling I got when playing Diablo 2. The dark, grim atmosphere, the difficulty, the beautiful voice acting and subtle feeling of dread. Truly an honor to be alive to play this game," end quote. Wow, okay, fair enough. Elsewhere, Steam user Pelly has almost 20 hours with it, saying, quote, "Even though it starts slow, in a good way, you get some momentum going as you chug along with every new piece of gear or new skill feeling like an actual power-up rather than an incremental increase. Keep in mind that it still has plenty of early access issues, like half of the content is missing and technical problems, but it'll get there eventually," end quote. Do I have my own thoughts for this one? No, I don't, because I only played like 6 minutes of it before I had to get back to finishing my Indiana Jones review. That's up on the channel, of course. And I plan to just smash it this week. I was going to be going to the Game Awards this week, as I said, and I didn't think I'd have time to play PoE. but now it turns out that I do. So that's the plan, and I'll let you know what I think real soon. In a world without Marvel rivals, I would have said that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle would have been the biggest licensed release of last week, but there you have it. Either way, Indy has done very well for himself. The Great Circle has garnered plenty of critical acclaim for the work that Machine Games has done in staying true to the Indiana Jones vibe, but also creating a compelling game that's a mix of Dishonored and Hitman and Thief and even some Chronicles of Riddick thrown in there. On OpenCritic is sitting at a mighty 86, which is a great score. GameSpot gave this a 9 out of 10, saying, quote, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is the quintessential Indiana Jones game. It captures the look, sound, and spirit of the movies, presenting a riveting story with an unexpected focus on stealth and freeform exploration that satisfies even when certain aspects of its design are slightly underwhelming. More than anything else, Machine Games has successfully designed a game around its protagonist. Its mix of improvisational stealth and combat feels distinct by adopting a fast and loose style that echoes indie scrappy persistence. It might not be quite as accomplished in all areas as the studio's Wolfenstein games, but Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is still a frequent delight, end quote. As for my own take, you can watch the video on the channel right now, link below the like button. I really didn't have very high expectations for this one. All the marketing material just kind of made it look like first-person Uncharted, which is nice, but you know, not super exciting, I think. But the truth is, this game is exceptionally well crafted, one that rewards your curiosity, gives you the tools to be creative in how you play it, makes you feel like goddamn Indiana Jones, and it's going to be a game we talk about for years to come. A massive achievement for Machine Games, and let's hope Microsoft gives them free rein to do whatever the hell they damn please for their next release. Again, check out the review on the channel if you're ready for it. Link below the like button. Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered is the package I never thought we'd get, but thank God Aspyr did it, and they didn't mess it up. They may be getting good at this whole remastering thing. It's sitting at an 81 on Metacritic at the time of writing, and it looks like it's introducing new audiences to Raziel and Cain, which is exactly what we all want, if we're gonna get a sequel. Here's GamesHub, who gave it 4 out of 5 stars on their first experience with these games. Quote, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered has revealed to me what a layered and intriguing world Crystal Dynamics created decades ago. Its characters are flawed and compelling, its world is stylish, gloomy, and gorgeous. There's such a richness in these games, and I'm so glad their re-release in remastered form allowed me to finally experience them. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered is a brilliant collection for those who love Soul Reaver, and the perfect introduction for new, curious players, end quote. Meanwhile, digital clips are great at preservation, but now they're trying their hand at something completely new. Though still in a retro style they're very familiar with, Power Rangers Reader's Rewind is the new co-op beat-em-up that's landed pretty well with a Metacritic score of 75. TechRaptor gave it an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Reader's Rewind is a wonderful homage to the IP and makes for a great beat-em-up with an exciting soundtrack and outstanding visual design. Fans of the Power Rangers will be pleased, end quote. All in all, pretty damn good week for licensed games, huh? So what comes out this week? Well, we're definitely getting into the skinny end of the year now, provided that, you know, no more games get shadow dropped at the Game Awards. First up, we've got Spirit of the Samurai, which launches on Thursday. This is a 2D action game that we featured on the show a while ago on account of how interesting it looks, the stop motion aesthetic, and its trio of very different protagonists, and just its whole vibe really. It looks really interesting. PC only for that one, out on Thursday. Joining on Thursday is Skydancer's Behemoth. So this is one of 2 big VR games releasing this week. I guess they thought that waiting until all of the huge flat screen games were out of the way was a good call, and you can't argue with that. This is a new one from the team who made The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, which is widely regarded as one of the must-have VR titles. This is a fantasy game that echoes Skyrim and Shadows of the Colossus as you travel around a fantasy land trying to take down gargantuan beasts. This one's on all VR platforms. If you want the complete opposite of that, there's a nice little indie game releasing this week called Pine: A Story of Loss. This comes from the narrative label Fellow Traveler, and it's a hand-drawn tale about a woodsman coming to terms with the death of his wife and the subsequent grief. Yes, I know we're all thinking about God of War right now, but it's not like that, I promise. It's quite different. It's based on some personal experiences from the lead developer, and it looks really nice, genuine, honest, and vulnerable. So if that's the kind of experience you might be looking for right now, it's out on Friday, and it's coming to PC and Switch. And finally, Alien Rogue Incursion is helping us cap out the year on Thursday. This Alien game looks like it's trying to ride the line between the horror of Alien Isolation with a bit of action thrown in there too, since you can still play as a colonial marine and there is a gun. Alien and VR seems like a done deal, but you never really know with this particular property. This one's headed to PC and PSVR 2 only. There's another horror game coming out this week that's gotten quite a bit of attention, and there's good reason for that, so put this on your radar.
Welcome to the Cabin Factory Corporation. Starting today.
This is Cabin Factory, and its appeal lies in a very simple but very enticing premise that makes your imagination fill in all the juicy gaps. Basically, you work in a cabin factory, and your job is to wait for the cabins to come to your station via conveyor belt, and you inspect them to assess whether they're haunted or not. If they aren't, you go back and press the clear button. If they are, ideally you go back and press the danger button as quickly as you can. It's one of the many horror games that have followed in the footsteps of PT, all aiming to make you feel very uneasy in a very short space of time, and the developer indicated that this one's only about 60 minutes long. Boy, do I want to see which one of those cabins are haunted. This one's also out on Thursday, and if you like the look of it, you can find a link to it over on our Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and over on Epic, it's that time of year where they usually gear up to give away multiple free games as part of their, year-end festivities. But annoyingly for all of us, those titles will remain a mystery until right before they're available, meaning we can't tell you what they are in a timely fashion. It's literally just a GIF wrap icon right now, so keep your eyes out for what that could be and make sure you don't miss it. It's otherwise all quiet for sort of free stuff this week, but thankfully Prime Gaming are definitely working overtime to make up for it. As part of the already announced games releasing this week, this Thursday you've got a gold code for the beautiful indie platformer Planet of Lana, definitely worth checking out, as well as Electrician Simulator on the Epic Store. But to mark the launch of the Secret Level Anthology series, Amazon has also thrown up a bunch of games related to the episodes in that series collection. And it seems like the folks at Hasbro and Games Workshop definitely want everyone to get into D&D and Warhammer 40k, because the games on offer include Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Neverwinter Nights, Warhammer 40k Dawn of War 1 and 2, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 1, Space Hulk Deathwing, and the very janky but ultimately worthwhile Necromunda Hired Gun. And thankfully there are two other games in there as well, both bangers, Spelunky and The Outer Worlds. That's the one from Obsidian, of course, not the other one, the one I won't shut up about. So if Santa doesn't bring you anything else for Christmas, here's hoping you've got yourself an Amazon account. Our feel-good story for the week is one very near and dear to my heart, Soul Reaver. So we discussed earlier that the Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remasters were just released and they're great, so congrats to Aspyr for nailing it. What you might not know is that video game documentary makers NoClip have been working for literally years on making a Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver documentary, talking directly with the people that made the game and, are responsible for its legacy all these years later, pun intended. As part of that documentary process, Crystal Dynamics gave NoClip access to a bunch of archival footage and files. Buried amongst these are recorded auditions for the various voice roles, and it turns out that basically the entire cast of Metal Gear Solid auditioned for a role on Soul Reaver. Personally, I think Crystal Dynamics made the right calls in their casting, but I'll let you be the judge.
David Hayter, Raziel.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. I'm Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants.
This is Ariel, Jennifer Hale.
Your madness has shattered our dreams and blinded you. There is nothing left of me to fear, vampire.
No, Kain. Once more, you underestimate me. The dark gifts manifest differently in each of us.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth.
Raziel. I know you, Raziel. You are worthy.
Alright, ladies and gents, that is the show for the week. We'll be back next week for a Game Awards roundup. But in the meantime, be a doll and hit that like button, smash the subscribe button, and ding that notification bell while you're there. I'm off to drown myself in PoE 2 for the rest of the week, so leave me your build tips below. And don't forget to enter the Gigabyte PC giveaway, which is live right now and will be until early Jan. You can find all the details for that one over on my Indiana Jones review. Thanks again for watching, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Raycon. Man, I don't know about you guys, but I struggle to buy gifts for people. You just sit there scrolling through Amazon, hoping that inspiration will strike, and it never does. Luckily, I have a little hack that might come in handy this gifting season, and they're called Raycons, and they just so happen to be sponsoring this video. Raycons rule because they're a high-quality, useful product that everyone needs, and best of all, they're very reasonably priced. In fact, they start out at just around half the price of the major competing earbud brands. They have tens of thousands of 5-star ratings, and for good reason. They deliver great audio in a super convenient and reliable package that just got even better since Raycon have just refreshed their flagship everyday earbuds. This new model is an evolution of Raycon's already incredibly solid and reliable product, improving every aspect of it while also adding entirely new features. On the improved side of things is the design, which is even more comfortable and ergonomic than before, and their in-ear design means that they stay on your ears way better than many other earbuds. There's also improved battery life. These things will go up to 32 hours now, 8 hours of direct playtime, and a fast charging case that gives you 90 minutes of playback in just 10 minutes of charging. In terms of newly added features, the everyday earbuds now have active noise cancelling, and this is a feature that you usually have to pay like a premium for from other brands, but Raycon have just added it while maintaining their same affordable price point that they've always been famous for. There's also now support for multi-point connectivity, meaning you can sync 2 devices at once, and the earbuds will automatically switch to whichever device is outputting audio. It is super convenient being able to sync these things to like an iPhone and an iPad at the same time. They even went the extra mile well with the case, since in addition to your choice of colors for the earbuds, you can also buy a case protector that comes in a range of additional colors. I got the yellow sunset option, making it a lot easier to spot when I leave these things laying around my house, which is what I usually do. These everyday earbuds are brand new. They just arrived and they deliver so much value for money given how much functionality is baked into them given the price. I've used them for literally years now and have always been impressed with their performance and reliability. Hell, I actually own a few pairs of these because I like to keep one by my bedside that I just use at nighttime or whatever, and I keep one in my gym bag so that I don't accidentally forget to put them in my gym bag and then I have to go to the gym without earbuds, which really annoys me. The cutoff for holiday gifting is fast approaching, and if you want to make sure your pair arrives in the mail before Christmas, then you're going to want to put in an order before December 15th. Or better yet, just do it right now. Head over to buyraycon.com/skillup to get up to 25% off your order. That link is below, pinned in the top comment, but it's buyraycon.com/skillup for 25% off. Thanks Raycon for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.